Okay, I'm handing it off to Traci. We're 1 minute after, so I think we're ready to start. It's all yours, Traci.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Hey, Shailia, thank you for organizing the boot camp this session and go around. You did an awesome job, and please chime in. We're trying to protect Shailia's voice. She's been a little under the weather the last week and a half. Hopefully you are on the mends. Wanted to kick off today, and I know, Gary, you're getting ready to head out, but one of our newly one of our new certified floodplain managers who was attending the boot camp as well is on, and he has graciously offered to talk about his experience and open it up to any questions. The one thing I will say is, before I turn it over to you, Gary, the one thing I'll say is you guys can ask me any questions. Unfortunately, he cannot say anything about any specific questions that he was asked, this generalization, but Gary, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw it over to you to kind of just tell everybody kind of, your experience on the exam and just your experience, just trying to kind of get through and understand some of the questions.
Had to give him a lead in and a great shout out. Congratulations, Gary. And Ryan, you were also our newly crowned CFM this semester. So feel free to jump in and help Gary if you've got thoughts.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, it took me a couple times to get through that test. It's a challenge. And I thought after taking it the first time with the electronic, boy, I'll tell you what, it was nerve-wracking. It really was. There were some things that you have to watch out for. Number one, make sure that you take your PIN with you. They give you a PIN, assign you a PIN number. Make sure you have that PIN number when you go. Because I showed up and I did not have my PIN out. Obviously, I didn't read my instructions very well. So read the instructions when you go to take the test. Make sure that you've got everything with you that you need. You're going to need some form of ID. It's got to be government issued ID. So like your driver's license or something like that, or a military ID card. It has to be a government ID card anyway. So, but as far as the testing goes, it took me a couple times to get through that test. I'll tell you, it's not something that you can just breeze through. And rest assured, the more experience you have working in the field, the better off you're going to be when you go to take that test. Some of the terminology that they use, you must be familiar with the terminology. They're going to challenge you probably like you've never been challenged before. I've taken several federal tests in the past. I've got my drone license, the pilot license. I passed that test first time around, no issues whatsoever. I've taken several military tests and have done really well on those. Never had any issue with them. I took the EMT course and passed the test first time around. Never had any issues with that. But this test will challenge you. And don't think that you can take the test one time, fail it, and go back and take the same test over again, because that's not going to happen. They've got 4 or 5 different tests that they throw at you. So you never know which test you're going to get. I highly suggest you study up on your mitigation, because that is a big portion of it. And I missed, I'll tell you what, the first time going around, mitigation aspect, I missed quite a few on that. So make sure you study up on the mitigation. Any other questions?
And the good news is we have Nadine on to help, who taught that mitigation section. So if you guys have some questions when Gary and Ryan are done, you guys can ask her. And then I would just say, as far as the mitigation, I think what really helped me on those sections was taking that extra EMI course that Nadine suggests. That helped me a lot with the mitigation.
Yeah, and I would go over the mapping courses as well. I tell you what, really hit those mapping courses. If you can take those exercises and do those practice exams that they offer, I would highly encourage you to take those over and over again so you're completely familiar with those on the mapping.
I agree with what Gary's saying with the mapping too. Was if you got one question on the mapping wrong, you would have got like the next 4 or 5 wrong. So it's real important to be able to understand the maps and know how to use them to get the first one right. That kind of leapfrogs to the next couple.
Right. That's true. That's very, very true.
No, that's great advice. Does anyone have anything that they want to ask Gary about on any of the questions? One of the things, Gary, we were talking about is, and Ryan, this doesn't pertain to you because some reason, I think if you're a planner, you really question on how they word some of these questions. But if you're an engineer, you're able to weed it out a little bit easier. And I don't know what the reason is for that. I think just because you're always dealing with it.
Yeah. And as a code compliance officer, you know, I've worked for the last couple of years now with violations and everything, but I haven't really worked on the permitting process. I mean, that's not something I do, and so that makes it a little bit more challenging for me. However, you know, with the working with the planners here and going through all the processes, that helps out as, you know, and I'm completely familiar with what it is our responsibilities are within the community. And that's a big thing too. Make sure that you understand what the community responsibility is. So if you get those things down and pay attention to the, I'm going to say the Clean Water Act, be familiar with the Clean Water Act. That's a good one to start with. Make sure you understand that every aspect about the Clean Water Act.
Yep. No, that's great. So mitigation, Clean Water Act, and the mapping. I think that's where a lot of people are kind of get stumbled. I know, Ryan, you mentioned on the mapping. So, I mean, you do some mapping. Ryan does a lot of the reviews for local communities. Was there anything that was like a major surprise, or was it just really important that you kind of go over some of the additional training, you know, options that are out there before you took the test?
Yeah, I'd say it's really just knowing how to read the map and making sure and looking at the entire parts of the maps, even if it's in the very bottom of the corners, that they sometimes don't put the information right in the center. They make you search for it a little bit.
Okay. That's good. And I guess we'll throw this out to everybody that is on boot camp right now. I mean, hopefully everybody's getting ready to take the CFM exam. If you are not, but you stumbled on a situation where you're like, I really want more experience on learning how to read the maps, and you want like some specific one-on-one training, give us a holler, and we can try to help you out. I mean, between the regional engineers, you have Ryan and Linda on today, and then also our floodplain engineer, Mickey's on. Between them and the community assistance program staff, Anthony, Shiley, and myself, we'll be happy to kind of go over, set something up with you to kind of understand that a little bit better. And so just know that you guys can always reach out, and even our Utah folks, Tom and Mackenzie, you guys don't need our help, but if you ever do, we are more than willing to try to help you guys out on that as well. So we're not, you know, we want you guys to reach out to us, you know, even after the series. If you guys got something going on that you're like, hey, I just need a little bit more assistance, like please feel free and to reach out, and we can do some one-on-one training. That's not a big deal. I don't know, Ryan, did you have anything else you wanted to maybe add in as far as anybody getting ready to take that exam?
Yeah, you know, I use those Quizlet flashcards a lot. I think Perry put them together when everyone took it. I use those a lot, and it got me to a point where I could memorize a bunch of the terms. So like, I don't know, a third of the questions were pretty much straight memorizing off those terms of those flashcards. So then you have those right away done, and then you can spend more time taking your time on the mapping stuff. So definitely just kind of memorizing some of those terms and kind of some of that terminology can definitely make other parts of the test give you more time for other parts of the test.
No, that's fantastic. How many of you guys that are on, how many of you guys, we've sent out the Quizlets before, but how many of you guys have actually been able to get in there and use them? If you guys can put in the chat or come off mute, have you guys been utilizing them at all? Okay. Yeah, as Nadine's putting in the chat too, there's a Cahoots for testing that was, yeah, that was also built, and we use those for CFM. I think both of those, were sent out to everyone. If you don't have them, just let us know. And some of the things that we wanted to kind of review today too are just some other tools for you. And we'll kind of go over one of the testing too. I don't know, Shilea, Ryan and Gary, are there anything else that we want to like tell folks before we get into kind of the review section? Anything?
Yeah, I would definitely say, go over the, elevation certificate. They need to understand what every different part of the elevation certificate is for. Okay, that's a big part of the testing, is understanding who fills out what sections of the elevation certificate, what's used, what sections use the different parts of the elevation certificate. You know, like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? Are you elevating on fill? What sections do you use based on that information? So, and if you know that, you know where to find the information in the elevation certificate. That's important.
And there's some online tutorials on the elevation certificates as well, and we can try to get that over to everyone. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I would definitely be able to understand how the elevation and how they work and where you get the information from that. It's just really important.
Was it pretty easy to open up some of the maps when you're taking those tests online too? I
didn't have any issues. I mean, when you open something up and if they ask you, they're going to build it, there's a little square box of where the maybe the building is going to be located at. So it's boom, it's right there in front of you. It was very easy to use, not like the old paper test where you had to look all over for the map just to find out where they were talking about. Now it just jumps out at you. It's like, oh, okay, we're right here. So no, they've definitely improved on that part of it. So
great.
So.
Well, here's your last opportunity because Gary is ready to head out for the weekend. He's got some awesome plans. So you guys have one more opportunity if you guys want to ask any questions for Gary or Ryan that are on.
Or Nadine. Nadine's on too if you got questions for her. I'm gonna stick a couple of things in the chat for you guys, but you just saw on Bootcamp, I emailed you everything on elevation certificates, including the checklist and the instructions and our PowerPoint presentation. I emailed it to you guys on 3/8, trying not to spam you. So hopefully you guys maybe made a folder to save all those resources. And I would think too, what would help you a lot, what I've noticed is when you read those instructions, whether it be for a Loma or Lomas, the MT1s, those kind of things, read the instructions because they usually have a lot of good basic information. I also sent you stuff on NFIP 101 on 3/14, and I'm finding where I sent you guys stuff on the Kahoot and all those resources too. So I'll be dropping those into the chat for you guys. And if you ever need me to re-email them, just reach out. But I'll try to keep and refrain from spamming everyone's email.
No, thank you so much for all that information. And Nadine's popping stuff in there as well. So you guys have a lot of assistance. The other thing I wanted to mention and just highlight that Mickey, our new floodplain engineer, we can't really call him new anymore. He's been here for a couple months now, but I don't know, Mickey, if you want to come off. Mickey is actually getting ready to, he's really pinging us on looking at overhauling our website to put some really, you know, just to make sure that we have a lot of really good information out there for everyone. He's looking at putting some guidance together on questions that come up all the time. Things like Loma, what do we do with Loma and Loma RFs? They're for insurance purposes only. Are permits required, you know, for any development that occurs in them, even if they have those, you know, all these little things. He's going to start kind of gathering stuff and kind of poking around to make sure he gets some good guidance together. So we'll get that all on our website as well. And so if there's topics that you're like, hey, we'd like to have some more guidance. I don't know, Mickey, if you want to talk about any of the stuff that you're looking at doing. I'm just excited. In the next few months, you guys are probably gonna see a lot of stuff available on our website.
Sure. Yeah. And I think more than anything, my target audience is you know, the FPAs and making a lot of the resources that you may get from Traci and the CAP team or regional engineers just at your fingertips on the website. So it'll take some time to kind of make all the improvements we'd like to see. So hang in there. But if you also have ideas, reach out to me, and I'm going to be kind of leading that effort. So I'll field any ideas you have.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mickey. Gary?
Okay, hey Traci, I'm gonna get out of here.
All
If
right.
no other questions, I'm gonna head out. So thank you guys so much for all your efforts to get us trained. I wish everybody the best of luck on that test. Study hard, and I'm looking forward to seeing some new CFMs out there.
Hey, thanks, Gary, so much. And listen, you have a great weekend. Thank you for jumping on today.
You betcha. Bye.
Bye. All right, let's get into some of the review stuff here really quick. So as we mentioned, there are a few things that are out there. One of you heard Ryan and everybody talking about the Quizlets and the Kahoots. Those are great ones. Having the flashcards, we've got handwritten flashcards in our office too that like some of our staff takes. If that's something that you're like, hey, can I borrow it? By all means. I think Sarah might be using them now, but yeah, we'll be happy to let you guys use that too. Now, another thing too, I just want to point out is on that 480 that you have at the very end. So on page, like, I think they start on page 472. This is at Appendix H. Hopefully everybody can kind of see it. What they have on 480 are a whole bunch of learning checks. And what's nice about it is once you go through that first unit, then they're going to have the answers to it. So you can make your own cards off of that. And that's what a lot of the Quizlet cards and everything else were, and Kahoots. We took a lot of that information that was in this FEMA 480 and actually put it into, you know, our documents that everybody's been using for the for getting prepared for the testing. So again, if you're looking, that's that FEMA 480. We sent you guys a copy of the document. If you're missing it, just let us know. And if you go to that 472, it has a whole bunch of learning checks in the back there. Not only for, you know, they break it down by each unit, but then they also have one towards the end as well. What we thought we might do today is actually go over the one from ASFPM. So how many of you that are on are actually members of ASFPM? If you guys can kind of put in the chat, I know we've got like 18 people on. I know I'm a member of Perfect McKenzie. Awesome, quite a few. Now, how many of you guys have actually been into their practice test that they have? Awesome. Good, great, Hannah. Yeah. Sweet. Bye, Ryan. Nice. Okay, so on that, now there's a lot of you, like we were talking about, this link was put into the chat by Shailia. I will say that one of the things that we did notice is unless you are a member of ASFPM, you can't access this. But why we wanted to kind of go over is to look at how they word some of these questions. Like that's a big one, because if you're looking at, let me stop my video real quick. But if you're looking at how they're wording some of these questions, it's sometimes, you know, sometimes it's pretty obvious, but sometimes it's not. Like even looking at the first question, if the community does not participate in NFIP, then you're going to want to read through everything. So we wanted to kind of look at this one and say, okay, all right, if a community does not participate in NFIP, federally backed mortgages are unavailable in the floodplain. These are the ones that you know, floodplain maps will expire, flood disaster aid will cover any flood events, and FEMA will issue the floodplain permits instead. That's not, I mean, you're looking at that. What do you think is the answer on this one here? This is not like a really, there's like a little, like they've taken bits and pieces out of some of the things that you're aware of. So we'll go with it here. First one, right. Yeah, and see, that's not intuitive. Yeah, it's weird. You guys can come off mute. This is super weirdly like worded, but what they're saying, what they're getting at is that, yeah, if you're going to have a federally backed mortgage, if somebody has a federally backed mortgage, they have to get insurance. That's part of the requirement. And that's what they're getting at. But it's not, I mean, if like, okay, insurance isn't available, insurance isn't available in non-participating communities, what does that mean? So it's not, when you're looking at these questions, know that it's going to be something like, oh, they're not going to put this like straightforward. They're really going to try to pull out, like Gary was saying, you really do need to like do these practice tests. Kind of administering the program helps you out, but they word these really, really a little bit weird. Going into the second one, the first step of the development permit process is. And this is one that's kind of crazy because I always look at it and I go, wait a minute, is that the development permit process for the applicant or is it for the floodplain administrator? Like what is that first one? So if you're looking at 1, 2, 3, or 4, what do you think? And I know Mackenzie, those guys, yeah, yep. 3, applicant prepares. And that one's kind of, but again, some of the way they word this, it keeps you guessing. And I think that's where like folks like Ryan, those guys are, nope, they're just talking the application. Like some of us that are planners, like, well, who are they talking about? What stakeholder? We start looking at everything from 5 different angles. That's just kind of it's harder. I think for me, it's harder as a planner to weed out stuff. Whereas my husband's an engineer, he gets right to like the meaning of it. And I start looking at everything. I overanalyze. Okay, I'll just be truthful here. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Thanks, Mackenzie. So then, what types of projects would trigger the need for permits from other state or federal agencies? All of the above. Absolutely. All of the above. So this exam here is a really good one to kind of give you an idea of how they'll probably be wording a lot of this information. And now they're going to go into match the following regulations. The left column to the corresponding type of flood hazard information available from FEMA. So this is that stair step, that ladder one. So if we start with A, if you look at the side, we'll look at the right side. We'll label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if we're looking at A, which one would go with that first like tier for the federal regulations? Would it be 1? Would it be 2? Would it be 3, that approximate A? Would it be 4, zone AE? Would it be 5? 4. So starting off with A, no flood hazard information. I think you just pull that up. And that looks like how they'll be doing it on that. If we're looking at B, so we're looking first, no maps. That's what the CFRs, the Code of Federal Regulations, talk about. Now we're looking at A was no maps. B would be that next level of mapping, is how I think about it. So that next level of mapping would be that approximate A. So that's how you kind of think about that. Then, okay, what's that next step of mapping? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, we have a what we would call like a limited study. So we have the flood hazards and there's elevations, but there's no flood way. And then it would kind of go that way. I'm trying to think of which ones here that they have. And then you would have, let me see here, zone A, AE. Oh, maybe I messed that up. So here's a question for you guys. Would C pertain to flood hazards with elevations, or would it be this zone A, AE, AO, HA, and AR for C? What do you guys think? Would it be 3 or would it be 4? Now I'm second guessing myself.
This is a really good example of
Good.
why the test screws you over.
Yeah, it is a really good
Because
example.
to me, if I just look at E, and I know this isn't answering your question, Tracy, but E has the V zones in it. So you know that one's got to come up. It's trying to figure what's in F. I don't remember what's in F. Here, let me.
Yeah,
pull
so this
up.
one would,
I think your F is the that one that with the AR.
with the R
Yeah.
right down here.
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
think-
And then I think you had it right. The AE with elevation snow floodway.
yeah.
And then D is your AE with elevations and
Floodway.
floodways. And then
I
your V.
agree.
Look at that. That took a team effort.
I think it's right. Good job, Mackenzie.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of like, oh, wait a minute here, you know, and then now, guess what? Because now I'm going to go back and look at all this because guess what? Now, if you get one of those wrong, you get 4 other ones wrong. Does that make sense? So it's one of those things where you're looking at it, you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute here. So yeah, we'll look at the CFRs and take a look at that. But yeah, that's one of those kind of questions that you're looking at and you're like, wait a minute here. How does that, you know, what are we looking at? And how is that put in? And this one doesn't tell you, I think, until you're at the very end.
Yeah, we have to answer, I think, all 25 of those questions for that section. I don't remember exactly. The other thing I just remembered, Tracy, is everybody should maybe just jump on and pay their ASFPM dues because you remember you get a discount for taking the exam if you're a member. So then if you pay it ahead of time, you can practice with this test.
That's a great.
Just
great
do
point.
it when you're getting ready and, you know, a month or so before you're getting ready for the exam.
But yeah, this is a good one. I have not taken this little this kind of pre-test one that they have up here. So this is my first time even looking at it. I didn't even open it before. This is something that Shelly was like, hey, we should go through this. I'm like, all right. So this next one too, again, it's a really good indication of how these test questions are actually written. So when you guys think about subdivision and the requirements, I mean, think about there's a very specific regulation when it comes to, you know, what triggers that detailed base flood elevations to be developed before a permit can be issued for this. So is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? And 1 or 2 look very, very similar, but they're not. Yeah.
I was gonna say too, Tracy and Shiley, I took this. I still need to put together. I haven't had that much time, but because I found that same thing. Like lots of our floodplain managers aren't members of ASFPM, and some of them can't afford to be members of ASFPM because it costs so much with them being smaller communities. So I took the test and I ended up I was able to make it into a Word document. So now I need to go through and actually make all of the answers to it. So then once they go through it, then they can see if they're right or not. So I've been putting that together.
Mackenzie, can we steal that from you when you're done too? Would you share?
Yes.
That is fantastic. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's awesome. This one though, number 5 is a good one. This is where when we talk about Montana higher standards. So in Montana, there's specific language when it comes to subdivisions. So if when we tell you like, hey, this is a national test, you have to deal with, you know, just the federal minimum standards because it's a, you know, again, they give out this exam to everyone throughout the United States. So they go with the minimum federal standards on this. So in Montana, we would say, wait a minute, but we think that, you know, 3 would be okay for number 5, like all proposed subdivision developments, regardless of the size. That's where it's really important to kind of understand if you are looking at taking that, the CFM exam, unfortunately, Montana, you have to throw away all the higher standards and really get down to that federal standard. So for this one, it's always been 5 acres or 50 lots. So that's what is in the CFR. So just kind of remember that. Then we get into the definition, match definition to the appropriate letter from FEMA. So here we go. Again, we'll look at the right. We'll count it 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so here we go on the top, the first one on the left, the community initiated process to update a flood insurance rate map to reflect flood hazard changes. Hey, thanks, Tom, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in Utah.
You guys are great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you take care. So if it's a community initiated process that you're going to reflect flood hazard changes, which one do you guys think it's going to be? So let's go ahead and bring this up here. Letter map revision. Right, yeah. So an official letter from FEMA recognizes a property is mapped in the floodplain, but it is actually located on natural, that's the key there, natural high ground above the BFE. Right, yep. An official letter from FEMA that modifies a special flood hazard area shown on a form to reflect the impact of fill placed outside of the existing regulatory floodway. Boom. And then, of course, the last one would be a comment. So again, those conditional letters of map revisions do not change a map. They are actually conditional, and it's ones that, it's just FEMA's comment on that as well. Getting into what structural element is used to check for elevation compliance on a Zone V structure. All right, here's your opportunity. Put the test what you learned. Don't worry about it if it's wrong or not. We're just all working together. Getting quiet out there. Which one? 1, 2, 3, or 4 for number 7? Right. Yep. All right, going on to number.
Hey, Tracy, that's a good one because it's going to change if we're in a zone A, right, guys? The zone A, we talked about that a lot. The zone A would be different. It's not going to be lowest floor. What would zone A be?
And what's crazy, they put in all these terms that we've heard. So if you're like working in floodplain management, you've heard lowest floor elevation. Oh, wait, lowest adjacent grade. So it really does throw out these terms. It's like, oh, wait, what do we need here? So it's again, I think this is a really good example of how some of these tests are laid out here for you too.
And if it was zone A, right, it'd be top of the lowest floor.
Yep.
So just make sure when you're taking the test what they're referring to, which zones, because the answers will change.
No, it's a great comment, Shailia. And then we're going on to number 8. Again, looking at 1, 2, 3, and 4. In a riverine special flood hazard, new or substantially improved non-residential structures must either be elevated to or above the base flood elevation, or, I like some of these, they must have a sump pump installed. And only basements, yeah. They must be flood proofed. Absolutely. Go Mackenzie. All right. And that's a good one as you're starting to look at all this stuff. I mean, it really gets into, you just have to read through just read through all of them quickly. Look at the, kind of cancel out the ones you think like, no, there's no way on that one. And then just narrow it down to which one's going to be that right. Yeah. again, Mackenzie, that's right. It's non-residential. That's the key there. It's, yeah, that it has to be flood proof. So just knowing, yeah. And Mackenzie, I know you've been looking at a lot of this stuff too. So yeah, come off if you have any comments on what you were thinking about when you were first reading them too, and you're like, wait, what? Because again, this was my first time reading. I'm like, interesting on how they're putting it, but it's very similar to how they ask some of these questions on that test too. All right, going on to number 9, structures with their lowest floors below the base flood elevation must have. Yeah, it is 3, but I mean, again, I have so many questions about this. This is another one that's tricky. So structures with their lowest floors below the base flood elevation, like it's, again, this is assuming that you know what the provisions are for enclosures and what is an enclosure, and if they have, what's required. I mean, this, again, they're asking at a higher level. Like when they tell you that you have to have like 2 years of experience and understanding before you should have that before you take the test. This is why they're asking, unless you're like working with permitting all the time. It's something that you can easily miss. Like, and then they, again, look, they say like the top one's at least 1 flood opening, but you need to have those 2. And then they switch it, at least 2 flood openings placed within 2 feet of grade. Well, we know it's a 1 foot of grade. So the way they're wording it is not going to be like a straightforward one. They're really going to make you have to think through some of this. And again, if this is like Gary was mentioning, he didn't do permitting, but he did a lot of compliance. And that's what he does for Cascade. But if you're not dealing with this stuff, it might be something that can easily get kind of confused. So what is the flood opening sizing requirement for crawl space? I'll throw it out there again, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Again, read it. It's what is the flood opening sizing requirements for a crawl space? Yep. You guys are right. So again, if you look up there, you can easily get tricked because it's 1 square foot of opening. So you got to make sure you're reading that. And I know this sounds simple, but I'm telling you, a lot of people get like tripped up on some of this stuff too. And then on here, this is that elevation certificate that Gary was talking about. I'm not sure if I can. Hold on. Locate the following elevation certificate building elevations on a diagram. So here we go. Which one? You can see these are actually numbered. Where is the top of bottom floor? Which one do you guys think? That's what I thought too. It would be 6 on that. So that's the top of the bottom floor from what we're seeing. And I guess Mackenzie, will you come off on it and just what's one of the reasons that you're thinking that is probably that bottom floor?
Because that's like it's the bottom floor of your structure. So it's not talking about, and maybe it's just because we talk with our floodplain managers about this all the time, trying to explain to them because they always think it's your main floor. And we're like, no, if you have a basement or any of that, that is your bottom floor. So like for flood insurance, that's where it starts. For, regulations, everything, it includes that basement. So that's why I'm like, no, that's the top of your bottom floor. It's not number 1.
And that,
where most people would think.
and that I really appreciate your feedback on this too, because so for all of us that are in Montana, this is where you get tripped up. In Montana, your regulations say that bottom floor including basement, our crawl spaces are handled a little differently, are required to be elevated 2 feet above. Yeah. And that you know what, that's the other thing. I'm glad you brought that up too. Like, it looks like a crawl space. Does that matter? But here's the thing, though, I don't think those floors are actually flood openings. I think they look like windows. Or am I wrong on this? Do you guys think that? I mean, again, it like would not
I was
know.
wondering that same thing, Tracy,
Yeah.
because are they truly flood vents? Or are those truly just smaller non-egress windows
That
down there? I mean,
Yeah, what did you think of that, Mackenzie? Because I was looking at that too, and that's the first thing. Like, again, I haven't seen this, so like to me, I'd be like, "What is that?" Like, if I didn't, and again, you're not giving you enough information, so I would be like, "Wait, is that?" Yeah, it looked like vents. Okay,
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was wondering if it was meant to be more of a crawl space rather than an enclosure or a basement, because I was thinking they were vents as well.
so
because if it was a crawl space, then does that change it? Because then does it become number one? Or is they're going to consider number one top of the lowest floor?
I think 6 is gonna. I think from the federal standards, they're gonna look at that, whatever that lowest floor. That's what they're going to consider, whether it's a crawl space or a basement. They're gonna look at that. The top of that bottom floor, like Mackenzie was saying. Yeah, that's what I think. And Mackenzie, I mean, you guys have talked about this before too, so this one goes to that fact. Is it, this thing I always say, like, what I think of as a fence can be completely different than what Shilea or Mackenzie think of as a fence. It's the same thing. Like, I'm looking at this diagram, I'm like, is that a window or is it a vent? Like, all of us are like, wait, I think it looks like a vent. Wait, no, it could be a window. So but the fact of the matter is that bottom floor is like where, like Mackenzie was saying, that number 6 there. So what's the top of the next higher floor? 1, right? So I'll bring that up. Okay, so this one here is the lowest adjacent grade, and that green area is that area that they're showing is like the natural grade. So which number would show the lowest adjacent grade?
It'd be like 2.
Right. Yep. Because then the next one says, what is that highest adjacent grade?
It would be 5.
Right. And so the ones that right now would be unused would be these 2 right here, the 4 and the 3 for right now. So yeah,
if that was a vent and that was the bottom of the vent, if they asked you a question about how high does that vent need to be, then that would be the 1 foot above the grade, right?
Yeah, the interior, exterior. So you wouldn't know what the interior looked like. Well, I mean, they're actually showing you. They are showing you, like with number 6. They're saying that's the bottom when you look at that. But yeah, it would need to be 1 foot from either. So if these truly were vents, this one right here, these are things that throw you off. If you look at, I don't know if you guys can see where my cursor is going around this one right here, I would question if this one actually met that specific. I mean, it might meet it right here, but it definitely would not meet it at the bottom here. So those are the kind of things that, you start questioning on that as well.
We'll say,
Don't tell them to question, Tracy.
No.
It'll undo all we've tried to teach them this year, and they'll be in a panic.
No.
Okay, go ahead, Mackenzie.
I was just gonna say, so this answer, because like I was telling you, I'm still working out and doing the answers to this test. Those are, so spoiler, those are the correct answers. It goes 6, 1, 2, 5. But because you just left 4 and 3, like how they are, which is what I did. Apparently it wants them in order, so you have to have 3 above 4.
Huh.
because it told me I got it wrong, but then it says the correct answers are, and it matches my answers exact, except for it says unused 3 and 4.
Well, no, I think I'm so glad you brought that up because yeah, we would have changed it. We'd be like, oh, we're done. But if it's not in order, then that might trip up and you wouldn't know that. And that would suck. Like, so.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I got this one right. And then I was like, no, I didn't, because the answer's right here. And I'm like, wait, yes, I did. But then, yeah, it didn't have it in order. So it said it was wrong. But
Nadine, thank you. You guys, Nadine's offering again. If you guys have any questions on mitigation or mapping, just email, give Nadine a call too. She's willing to help you out. And Mackenzie, I'm so glad that you're doing this with us so that you kind of, because I would have never picked up on that. So I think that's good to kind of see, like, it's training you on how to take their test here. So I think that like having that, like Shiley was saying, having that membership, if you're going to take the exam, you're going to, you want to have that discount. So having that membership is going to give you access to this. And I think that would be important. Or Mackenzie will have some stuff for us too. So looking at number 12, in the absence of a floodway, NFIP regulations require that cumulative rise resulting from development, is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? And again, we're talking on federal requirements, federal minimum. So we're talking like approximate A, maybe a limited detail study. How much can you see a rise if somebody is going to be doing a development? What is within that limit for the federal standards? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
3.
Yep. Mackenzie even put that in there for you, 60.3 C10.
Oh my gosh, what a show off.
She's awesome. You're awesome, Mackenzie. Don't listen to this, Shilea. You're good, girl.
She'll be trying to hire you at ASFPM.
We'll talk here. No, I'm just joking.
I will gladly move to Montana.
Woohoo! Traci would kill us. So yeah, I gotta. As much as I would love to have you over there, Traci would probably trip me at ASFPM.
Offline comment. I was looking at some of your lunch and learn stuff, Mackenzie, and I was thinking we should have an assistant exchange program to learn from each other, but we'll take that offline.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, Utah does a lunch and learn every month, you guys, and it's fantastic. So yeah, we should start putting that, if you guys are okay, yeah, we should definitely start putting that information, sharing it with everybody in our state too, because it's really helpful. But this is another prime example. In number 12, if you're thinking Montana standards, it's not 1 foot, it's going to be that 1/2 foot. So again, if you're looking, for Montana, you need to know it, but for the federal minimum standards, you got to understand what the difference is. And understand that the CFM is looking at the federal standard. So going on to 13, according to NFIP, which of these is a requirement for recreational vehicles? These are kind of, it's funny, you look at them and you're like, okay, there's one answer here that definitely, I mean, it stands out, but the other ones, it's funny how they throw in, it's like a little bit of change, but there's one on here that really.
Number 1's kind of tricky because if you really didn't know it was 180 days, you might be like talking yourself into the wrong answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, 180 days is at the top of the list for everything with dealing with recreational vehicles. It can't be on site for longer 180 days. The other thing that's really critical is that it has to be fully licensed and ready for highway use. Remember, we talk about when you look in RV parks or somebody brings in an RV, you want to make sure they don't put permanent stuff down like porches and stairs. But then now they start, on number 3, they start confusing it with like manufactured, mobile homes. So they're asking must be built before the community's first firm. And then this one is just general, must be used for recreational purposes only. Yeah, that's true, but that's not what's in their stuff. I mean, people shouldn't be living in there full time, but I mean, what the regulations talk about is 180 days and it has to be fully licensed and ready for highway use. So they throw out a lot of little things here for you. So going into 14, if a building has not been maintained and has deteriorated over time, then the market value for substantial improvement is determined by using, this is a tricky one here, the date of the application for the permit to improve or repair the building, the date the repairs or improvements are completed, yeah, it is a really tricky one. So if a building has not been maintained, has deteriorated over time, then the market value for substantial improvement is determined. So they're trying to give you all this thing, but the truth of the matter is it's going to come back here. Boom. They get into a lot of stuff, the date, the application. So now you're like determining like, oh, wait, does it mean that like, you know, are they talking about the original market value of building when it was constructed? No, they're looking at the market value of the labor and materials needed to restore the building to its original condition. It's not talking substantial damage, it's talking substantial improvement. And that's going to be the big one on that.
So the tricky word in there is the market value, because that's what's throwing you to, because you're like, oh, they're just trying to figure out when the market value is. When do you use it? Is it current market value, cost of construction market value, comparative market value, whatever. But like you're saying, it's really about the substantial improvement. So the market value part throws you a curveball. I might have got that one wrong.
And the reason they talk about market value is because sometimes people will tell you like, this is the hardest thing about substantial improvement. People will be like, look, you know what? Our church is coming in here and they're building it. Everybody's donating their time. And, we didn't have any cost for labor. But when you look at the substantial improvement guidance, it says there really clearly, they still have to account for the market value of the labor. So you can't put, it was volunteers, so it's a 0, or, my brother and I were doing it, so we're not charging. You still have to account for that market value of the labor. And that's where if you haven't been dealing with that stuff, it gets tricky. No, it is a trick. I agree with you, Shiley. If I was new and I hadn't dealt with substantial improvement before, it would trip me up too. So on this next one is number 15. Pre-firm structures are those that were built on or before the date of the community's initial firm was published, or which date? Think about when NFIP was enacted.
1968.
Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, that one is hard. That's why we were looking at McKinsey. I mean, but you start looking, you're like, wait a minute. So my brain, like when I tell you guys I overanalyze this stuff, like when I look at this question, I mean, you really need to hone in and okay, if you don't have like, okay, when you're thinking about like looking at the regulations too, even if you're in a community like that has like that would be considered under like 60.3A, there's no maps or anything. Every type of development in those flood prone areas would still have to adhere to those floodplain regulations if the community is participating. That means they wouldn't have maps. So you have to go back to this 1968 one. So that's that's where, but my mind's thinking, wait a minute, they probably didn't get maps out in the program until 1974. Like, so, don't try to get tripped up. And I'm not trying to confuse anyone, Shaylia. I was just saying that's where my crazy brain goes sometimes. So I have to weed through it. That's where I think that like some of the engineers are a little bit better at not going down these like rabbit trails, because I look at like 8,000 things all at once. I think of all scenarios. It's a problem, people. It's a problem. But just think about when the program was in place. Like I said, these are a little bit tricky. They're good ones though. So 16, a floodplain permit variance might be granted based upon which of the following factors? And this right here this is a good one. This is a really, really good one. I know we're losing on time, but I will tell you, this is a really good one to look at the factors. It has a unique geologic or topographic characteristic. We have had communities that have had to deny variances, and the applicant used the ADA stuff. And the reason for it was, one of the reasons for community doing the denial was because they were actually bringing somebody into the floodway, and they were asking for a variance to expand a structure in the floodway and put in a ramp, so they can bring their they can care for one of their family members. And the community was like, whoa, wait, this is not something we want to put more people in. So we don't really want to encourage putting somebody in, because if there were to be a flood event, especially in a floodway, because it was an older structure, like how are they going to get out? Also, anything that deals with financial hardship is not going to be grounds for a variance. So that's something that you should always think about as well. So again, I would think that number one would be the top one. What do you think on that one, Mackenzie? What did you see that one too, or?
Yeah, and that one again was a trick one, so I got that one wrong. And I will say you have the correct answer.
But Mackenzie, if I wasn't working with a community that actually had this, I would get it wrong too. Because I would be like, oh, ADA, yeah, for sure. You know what I mean? It would have gone over. The financial hardship one, I would have been like, yeah, it's an easy one to kind of get wrong on this one too. So I know that we are at the top of the hour. Like I said, this is a really good one. Mackenzie and Traci, those guys are such great partners. From Utah. And so I know Mackenzie said she's putting this together. If you guys have an ASFPM, if you guys are a member, I would say definitely look at this if you're looking at taking the test. This is great information here. If you are not a member, and it goes on too, these aren't the only, I think you can continue. There's quite a few of these.
There's like 100 and some questions, right, Kenzie? If I remember right.
No, this one's only 60.
Okay, 60.
Which is still a lot, but yeah, it's
a good exam though, and I think it gives everybody a good taste of why, because you can sit there and do the FEMA 480 questions at the end of the chapters, but they're pretty basic and straightforward. They don't have this level of double thinking, when you're trying to answer the questions like what you see on the exam. So hopefully this gave everybody a good test of what to expect. And then, of course, reach out to us if you have more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll start incorporating, this is kind of a newer thing that they put together. And so we'll start incorporating some of this into our next trainings. But again, you guys have a lot of resources out there. If you guys are still struggling, not just with the CFM exam, but just anything in general, reach out to us. Mackenzie, I can't thank you enough for your partnership and your guidance on a lot of this stuff. So we really appreciate you and the Utah team. And I encourage everybody, we'll get the information out about their lunch and learns, and they're fabulous. So, and
the other thing, we just want to thank all our floodplain administrators. You guys have stuck for months through this course, trying to get better at your jobs. We're seeing it. We're out in the communities right now. We're talking with you guys. And as Traci and I drive away, we're talking about, wow, you know, they have really come a long ways with what they're learning or trying to do. And I just think everybody should give each other a pat on the back today, because being a floodplain administrator is not an easy job, and you guys are all awesome.
Yes, you guys are definitely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Shailia, for putting everything on this round of Floodplain Bootcamp. And again, reach out to us. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and look forward to seeing you guys around. And if you guys miss us, like, reach out to us. It'll be great. We'd love to talk to you anytime. All right, you guys take care, and we will talk soon.
Happy Friday.
Yay, Friday.
Last
Thanks,
bootcamp
Traci.
ever.
Yes, bye, Linda.
Hey, Mackenzie, do you need to stay on and chew us out for not answering your question from a couple of weeks ago?
Oh,
Did you not answer what question?
It's in my inbox.